everybody, and welcome to the Makers in Minnesota podcast, where we talk to cool people doing cool things. I'm here today with Alex Steinman, and she is the one of the co-founders of the Coven. And the Coven started out as a co-working space. And I have to just say, while it is a co-working space, I feel like it's really almost like a movement. It's a community. It is one of the more unique co-working spaces, I feel like, in the Twin Cities because it offers so much more. Welcome to the program, Alex.
Wow, thanks for having me, Stephanie. What a great introduction.
Oh, I have explored the Coven and was all set to join because you were in Minneapolis first, and then you opened in St. Paul in my neighborhood. And then COVID happened and it was like shut down. And then I moved. So now I'm in the western suburbs and I don't have a Coven near me, but you are opening another one over on Lake Street, it sounds like, right?
We are on East Lake, kind of in partnership with the team at Dogwood Coffee Company. They'll be opening up the Coven in the building next to their coffee shop. And it'll be all designated desks and private offices. So a little bit of a different concept, a little bit smaller, but we're really excited to be partnering with other entrepreneurs who love the community as much as we do and are just such incredible supporters. So excited to be there. But maybe there will be a Western suburbs Coven soon. You never know.
I hope so. So, can you tell me a little bit about your original vision and maybe that's changed or expanded upon since the whole coronavirus pandemic that is three
Oh,
years ago
wow.
now?
Yeah, it's funny to say 3 years. It seems like the life has really blinked by. So about 6 years ago, the Coven co-founders, myself and three others, Erin, Bethany, and Liz, we all came together. We were working in the advertising industry, and we're working to help bring women, non-binary, trans folks, and people of color into leadership roles, not just into the industry, but really helping them grow. And what we found was while folks were really excited about the idea of, DEI practices, which were like, that buzzword was relatively new, that at that time,
Yep.
there wasn't a ton of investment in the work, meaning like actual dollars to make that shift happen. And so we just decided that what would it be like if we created the world in which we know that we deserve to live, work, and learn in? And what would it be like if we created that space? And so we really came up with the concept of the co-working community, which co-working was relatively new then. And pre-pandemic, if you remember, everybody was still going into the office if they had an office job. And so we were really catering to entrepreneurs and freelancers, folks who we worked with, right, in the advertising industry, lots of freelancers, lots of creatives. And it became a space for folks to really step into their economic power. That's really been kind of at the core of our mission, is helping people learn and grow. So we offer programming and events, live and now virtual, just so much kind of in the sense of how do you create a space that folks feel a sense of physical and psychological safety so that they can step into a risky, launch a business or grow into leadership. I think our membership has evolved a lot in the last, 6 years, 5 years that we've been around because of the way that the pandemic has shifted the way that we work, right? So we have a lot of people who are actually half of our members have an employer. And so, we're now talking to folks who work at Target and Best Buy
Right.
and small nonprofits and those types of things. So it's an exciting shift. We've actually seen a huge increase in team membership. So small to mid-sized companies that want to provide their employees with access to kind of a third space for them to work in, or they're getting rid of their traditional leases and are now kind of looking for that flex environment so people don't have to be stuck in their homes that they don't want to be. I think the future is choice for the future of work, and so giving people options has been amazing. But like you said, and COVID like really rocked the co-working world. I mean, if you look at the number of co-working spaces that there were pre-pandemic and then what came out of it 3 years later, I mean, there's a much smaller group of co-working spaces even available. Even though the demand remains really high, it just took a lot to keep these things in business when we were closed for a handful of,
Yep.
or operating at limited capacity for a couple of years. But within 24 hours of closing our physical spaces in March of 2020, we turned around a digital community because we knew that people needed to stay connected and together. So we launched on-demand programming. We launched happy hours. We launched coffees in the morning. We launched, how to work with the SBA to get your PPP loans, like all of those types of things to really support entrepreneurs and leaders when we were in deep isolation. We doubled our membership during the pandemic, which is amazing for
Yeah,
being a physical workspace. Uh,
absolutely.
but things have changed. It's been a wild, wild couple of years.
And you, I want to be careful how I say this because as more, I want to say like the freelance community is a big community. There's 122,000 of us just in the Minnesota area, I think is the last number I heard. But as that shifts from freelance creative side to sort of more middle of the road corporate America needing workspace environments,
Mhm.
how does that change the mission of your empowerment and your diversity and inclusion initiatives, or doesn't it?
I don't think it does. I mean, ever since the beginning, we've all been about whether you have an employer or not, we want you to be able to ask for what you need, step into a leadership role, lead with equity at the core. Like all of those types of things are relevant to both leaders and, mid-level managers and new to industry type folks, as well as entrepreneurs. And so we've always tried to find a little bit of a balance of how do you help folks either step into a new career with an employer or launch something that's their own. Not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur or a freelancer,
Yeah.
especially in this market. People want stability, so being able to cater to both has been helpful. And I think a lot of our programming speaks to both the entrepreneur and the aspiring leader.
I think this whole time frame of COVID and the murder of George Floyd and what we've learned coming out of it, what I personally took away from it, or one of the things, I was really uncomfortable with white privilege for a long time because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't fully understand what it actually meant. I thought
Mm-hmm.
it meant like somehow someone was trying to minimize my achievements or my light because they didn't have the same opportunities that I felt like I really worked so hard to gain. And in retrospect, I realize now that is like nothing to do with it. And it's
Mm-hmm.
more about just seeing other people like yourself and the ability of I can just walk into a room and as a middle-aged white woman, I have a certain amount of access and resources.
Yeah.
That has really, I think, struck me about your environment is if you can find other people that look like you or are doing the same kind of work or different work, but they're taking bolder steps or they're getting loans or they're, managing their social media differently, that like I would not be where I am today if I wouldn't have worked in environments where I had people that were like, hey, have you ever thought about this? Would you consider that? It's such an underestimated and undervalued resource, just the community, that
Mhm.
it's what I think you guys have this amazing opportunity to bring to people.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think it's like I said from the very beginning. I mean, even though we had a lot more freelance and creative type folks, it was really interesting to see, VPs of banks and, community organizers sitting next to each other
Sure.
and really like solving problems or even just checking in with one another. I think there's this element that, we've created in our space where you know, when you walk into our doors, like we care for you, regardless of your background or what you're coming from. When you step into the coven, we check in and make sure that you have what you need, that you can move through your day with ease. And it just creates a sense of, I can't necessarily say safety because that's in the, eye of the beholder, right? Like a
Yep.
safe space. But maybe even a brave community or a brave space where it's okay to show up as your whole self. It feels good to step into a space that might feel like, ooh, I don't know, like if I can start my own business or if I can meet this person who's sitting across from me. But we have so many stories of people who sit next to someone who they don't know, borrow a charger, and the next thing you know, they're like starting a business together. This is like real stories that actually
Yep.
happen in our space. So the pandemic really threw us for a loop with that kind of moments of serendipity that we love being unable to happen without being like physically in community. But our digital community has also offered a lot of opportunity for like serendipity and things. It just takes a little bit of different curation, I think.
Yeah.
And we always keep that in mind in terms of like, checking privilege and, calling people into conversation because there's always going to be oops and ouches and things that happen throughout a space. Being a Black woman from advertising, I feel like I'm constantly met with like microaggressions in any in any space. But I think what's unique about our community is we really work hard to give people the power to have agency and say, hey, that doesn't work for me, or for someone to say, hey, I don't understand, can you help me understand, or come to our staff and our community leaders and say, hey, like, how can I do better, or hey, this happened, can we address it? And I think there's a lot of trust built there in our community.
Yeah, because it is, I'll be just vulnerable here and say, I've had a lot of conversation with my friends of color, and they're like, it's not our job to like
Hmm.
continually educate you, Stephanie, and the white group about, how to be a good community ally. But at the same time, I think there is this interest from people that they do want to do better. They do want to be a better partner, offer more opportunities, maybe expand their circles. And there's
Hmm.
just really like you're worried about offending someone. You're worried about like saying the wrong thing. So I do think that community space, if it's free on both sides and like you can really have honest dialogue, that's how change happens. That's how you
Hmm.
move past being embarrassed to say the wrong thing, someone look at you and go, hey, do you realize that's the wrong thing? And here's why. And then you learn and you can share that with other people in your groups and your communities too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it helps too to have, we have a lot of white folks who are members who check each other,
Yeah,
and so like, and I think that's
for
like
sure.
relying on your own communities to say like, hey, like we're going to try to do better together in this sense so that we're not constantly relying on Black and brown folks to do
Yep.
that kind of emotional labor. So it's an exciting, I think, interesting time to be in community. I think the last handful of years has really help, like shown people like step up and be better allies, but also give space to Black and brown people who are tired and who
Yeah.
want a little bit of distance, a little bit of space. And I think our community provides both in our digital and our physical spaces.
Yeah, I had a interesting conversation about this sort of idea with my 91-year-old mother-in-law about gender.
Mm,
Because she's trying to figure out, how do I deal with all these pronouns? And I don't want to offend someone, and what's the right thing? And in our day, we didn't have all this. So we had a really good, I think, conversation about, how things change. But again, it all comes back to, are you coming at it from a place of authenticity, and do you support that community that you're in? I
mhm.
just I think work really gives you a lot of mores about life and social
Yeah.
culture and things that like my 24-year-old daughter who's never been in a work environment because of COVID, she has like her ideas about stuff, but I can't wait for her to actually get into an office and like have to work next to people. And,
Yeah.
I think there's so much of that that's been underestimated the value of that.
I think there's something really unique about a space that allows you to be seen and heard and valued. And that really comes from, when you walk in, like the first person
Yep.
that you meet when you walk in, who is like our community engagement managers. And I think setting the tone for what this community is all about and, how to feel seen yourself and help other people feel seen. I think that kind of mutual understanding is like required in our community, but certainly is being kind of challenged in corporate environments or in
Yeah.
offices as people start to navigate like what is it like to create community in my corporate office. So I'm really excited to see like this future of work that we're in right now as people are searching for community in new ways, finding their way back to one another. um, I'll be interested to see how corporations and organizations continue to kind of push the envelope in this way of like, how do we make sure that people feel seen so that they can show up as their whole selves, so that they, don't feel like they have to hide a piece of themselves. So, so that they do feel honored and recognized for, their own lived experiences.
As you move forward in your own expansion, what do you find that you guys need now?
Oh, that's a good question. Franchising and community ownership is really all about finding people who are connected to their communities. So we love the Twin Cities, we love Minneapolis and St. Paul and Minnesota as a whole. You know, we were one of like the leading co-working spaces in the middle of COVID, helping people navigate, you know, where do we find PPE and like all of those types of things. So we love this community so much. And what we want to do is find other people who love their communities just as much and allow them to have some power to create their community space. It'll be a coven, it'll look and feel like a coven, but it'll also look and feel like that community that they're in. It'll have artists featured there from people in that area. Their members will like fuel really what that space looks and feels like. So, you know, when we're looking for those types of folks who want to lead their own communities, that's really what we need right now, our community owners. And, you know, when Dan and Angie Anderson from Dogwood Coffee Company reached out and said, "Hey, we've got this building. Are you interested in opening a coven here?" I mean, our natural response was like, that makes total sense. And you all should run it because you know that community so well based on, you know, where you've operated your business. And so we're kind of in that on that hunt for, you know, who's the next community owner, and we're focused on underdog markets really similar to the Twin Cities, so middle and southern parts of the country. We know that there's a lot of pent up demand for inclusive environments for people to work and learn in, and we know the cost of doing business is much more affordable in the Midwest than it is on the coast. And so we're really trying to like navigate a little bit of, you know, where do these communities make sense from like a, you know, financial perspective, obviously, but then also like who are the right people in those areas. You know, we're not trying to open Taco Bells here. We're really trying to open like community centered spaces, which require a really special kind of person to run it.
So as you expand in a franchise model, it sounds like, is other states on the docket? And
Absolutely. Yeah. So
yeah,
we're looking in places like North Carolina, South Carolina. We love Michigan, Illinois, you know,
right.
places that are really akin, Nashville in Tennessee, you know, places that are really akin to the Twin Cities.
That's exciting because I don't know, my brother lives in South Carolina and I hear a lot of all the horrible things coming out of South Carolina and
Mhm.
Tennessee and Georgia and some of these places that they're really struggling with trying to, not slide backwards in a equality fashion. And so it's exciting to think about some of the more positive things that can happen in some of those environments.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating that all, you know, those types of like discriminatory bills are being passed in these states where there's like an influx of people from, you know, more, I would say more liberal areas
And
or, you know,
progressive, yeah.
coastal cities, more progressive states. Like they're all coming into those states. It's bizarre, you know. I think you know, the scales will tip the other direction. I think at some point, but it is really fascinating, and you know, it's disheartening to see that
Yeah.
type of like aggression coming out of state bills.
Also, too, just it kind of underscores for me how disconnected at times the body politic is from the politics and the legislators.
Absolutely.
It doesn't feel
Absolutely.
like, we're moving in lockstep and representative of what the people want in a lot of
Hmm.
instances. But I guess that's why I'm not a politician, right? It's exhausting.
Right.
Alex, I'm really excited to talk to you. I've been a fan of your model. I think, you guys got a hard lesson early on with the COVID environment. And I was in awe of how fast you pivoted and how inclusive you
Yeah.
were still for your community. And you guys are amazing. So congratulations on the
Thank you
new
so much, Stephanie.
launch, East Lake Street. And when you get to the western suburbs, just knock on my proverbial social media door and be like, "Hey girl, we're here now."
Will do.
All
Can't
right. Thanks,
wait.
Alex. Okay.
Thanks so
Bye-bye.
much.